Our next speaker is a 20-year-old rising junior at Yale University. He is an unapologetic American Muslim Bangladeshi student activist, entrepreneur, and speaker. He is the CEO and co-founder of JUV Consulting, which is a marketing consultancy that works with clients to help them reach young people. He is also the founder of Redefine, which is a youth-run, non-for-profit committed to furthering equality, and is also a global youth advisor for Viacom's Generation Change. Please join me in welcoming Ziad.
Hi, hi, hi. So when you think about Generation Z, what comes to mind? For me, as a Generation Zer, what comes to mind is memes and movements. And what I mean by that is that we are a generation of many things, and it's two sides of the same coin. We give young folks a hard time for spending too much time on our phones, but we're silent and don't critique our parents for taking selfies on their iPads. We like to pretend that we're just wasting our time, frivolously using our devices and not thinking critically about what that means or what that looks like. But the fact that we're creating these memes, creating these GIFs or GIFs, whatever you want to call them, has fundamentally reshaped how society operates, how political schema operate. Now, when the world happens, when chaos happens, we are synthesizing the political moments that we're living in through these memes, through these GIFs, right? So the fact that we're spending as much time on Instagram as we are means that our disruption gets to be mainstream. That when we critique, when we say things shouldn't be the way that they are, that gets to make headlines. And too often we tell young people, choose one thing or another. Right now, in this moment, you can only be a student. You can only be this, or you can be that our time must be later. No, our time is now, and it must be now. Thank you. And I mean that, right? Because the world's problems, what's happening right now, affects us deeply as a generation that's the most diverse ever, and a generation that is dubbed the plurals. And why are we dubbed the plurals? It's because we're thought to be the first generation that thinks in terms of we. And what that means is we're connected to thousands of people around the world, like this room, like the thousands of people that we're connected to online. So when we go to the polls, and you better believe that we go to the polls, we're not just thinking about the people who live on our streets, we're thinking about the thousands of people we're connected to online. We're reshaping how we think, and we're thinking in terms of we. And we're claiming that and saying, we don't have to choose one thing or another. We get to be all things. Why would you have a cake if you didn't get to eat it too? And I think that young people always have critiqued and said, we're going to ask hard questions and say, just because things have been this way doesn't mean they have to stay this way. But what's unique about the moment that we're living in is the digital tools that we have access to allow those disruptions to be mainstream. And for me, that's made a world of difference. I want to center any conversation I have in my privilege. And so I was uniquely privileged to do the work and to do the work that I feel so lucky to do. I'm from Princeton, New Jersey. I'm American Muslim. I'm unapologetic, and I'm damn proud to be me. Thanks. And I started a nonprofit right when I was at the end of 8th grade called Redefine. And we're a by teens for teen social justice advocacy group. I'm no longer a teenager, I'm 20, I'm getting old, I feel it. But I founded Redefine, when I was 13, 14 years old, because I looked around my school hallways, as I'm sure many of you have. And I saw people being othered, people being made to feel different. And I realized how often we're told to be something that we're not because of how we identify or who we are or how the world sees us, instead of just having the agency and space to be who we are and to claim that proudly. And I saw that as boys sat at one table and girls sat at another table, and all the boys' table wanted to talk about was girls and sports, and I wasn't with it. And so I found a new table because that's what Gen Z is about. It's not about fighting for a seat at the table. Millennials did that for us. It's about saying if the table is not for us, we're going to build our own or we're going to flip the damn thing. And so I looked at my lunchroom and I said, where do I belong? Where's my seat? And I think a lot of people are looking around their lunchroom and saying, where are the kids who look and feel like me? And you might fall into superficial categories and be like, oh, I'm probably in that artsy crowd, or maybe I should change myself to be in this jock crowd, or whatever it might be. And it's not as cookie cutter as it was in the 70s movies, but it still exists, in new and different ways. But I think that more of us are saying, no, we get to make our own tables. We don't have to play by the same rules. And so I saw this happening, when I was in middle school, and I said, it's only going to get worse in high school. People are just going to get meaner, and it's not always happening out of malice, it's happening out of ignorance. People don't know how to treat people with different lived experiences. People don't know better, because people don't know our stories, because we don't talk about them enough. We ask so often, how are you, and just expect a good. We need to be asking more, who are yous? And so what I did was I created Redefine to tell those who are yous, to share our stories, to connect. Because it's so hard to hate somebody you know. And through that, found myself in rooms that I never imagined. Found myself eating dinner with President Obama at 16. Found myself meeting with politicians, being in rooms like this that I didn't know existed. And I realized how often young people are talked about, but not talked to. And even when we are talked to, it's as the intern in the corner, or it's as an afterthought or a validation. How often do the same people that claim to championing young people's voices only use this as a prop rather than a partner? How often are we treated as guinea pigs rather than partners? As young people, so often there are literally youth experts who are talking about us instead of ourselves talking for ourselves. And I saw that, as a young activist, as a young nonprofit founder, being in these spaces. And so my junior year of high school, I founded Juve Consulting, a Generation Z consulting firm that is disrupting this marketplace by saying, no, don't talk about us, talk to us. And if anyone's gonna be profiting off of our narrative, it should be us, and you'll profit more because of it, because no one knows us better than ourselves. My work fundamentally comes from a place of no group of people should ever be talked about without that group of people present and centered in the conversation, full stop, period. And I mean that when I critique an all-male panel deciding how to police women's bodies. I mean that when I'm talking about the fact that there are ethnic studies departments who are headed by people who don't belong to those ethnicities and don't know those histories. And I mean that when young people are constantly silenced in conversations about young people. And so I sought to disrupt that, and we've had a lot of success doing so. I had no idea what the heck I was doing when I started. Now, we made Forbes 30 under 30 at 19. We have full-time offices in Times Square. We've done the whole thing this last year, right? And we're doing it. And we're being heard, and people are listening because our voices matter right now. Not tomorrow, but right now. And so when I think about what advice to impart, I'm not here to preach. I'm not. I'm here to have a conversation. I'm here to say that so often we're told to choose one or the other. But I don't believe that we have to choose parties or protest. I don't believe we have to choose activism or education. I believe we get to be all things. That doesn't mean we don't make sacrifice. Having your cake and eating it too doesn't mean you don't share the cake. Doesn't mean you get to eat the whole thing. Doesn't mean that you don't make sacrifices for eating that cake. Maybe it's your weight. But it means that we get to have our cake and eat it too. And so I'm trying to spread a message, right, that I get to be at 20 years old an activist and an entrepreneur and a speaker and a student and what? We get to be what we want to be. And who's gonna tell us different? Right? Our truth is our truth. And we walk in our power. And we walk in that truth. When I'm here with Viacom and Generation Change, and I'm here with a bunch of young people, right, who are doing the damn thing right now. Because our time isn't later, it has to be now. And so as I look around this room, right, and as I look around the world, what I want so badly is two things. One is that if you ask me the one thing that I wish that we could change about the world, is that I think so often, so much of the strife that exists is because people operate from a mindset that if I don't see it, it doesn't exist. You know, if I don't see white privilege, it doesn't exist. No, because you don't see white privilege means it exists. And I think so often we allow our own experience and our own perspective to be the law and the rule instead of the exception. And that needs to change. Who am I to tell a young woman of color what her experience is? Who am I to tell a refugee about what their lived experience is? Who am I to tell somebody else about their truth? And I hope, and I pray that Generation Z is a generation to disrupt this paradigm, to say, no, I am never the expert on something I don't know about, on something I don't experience. I believe the oppressed are always the experts on their oppression. I believe that the person experiencing that reality is always the expert on that reality. And so that paradigm needs to fundamentally shift. So what I encourage you all to do is follow folks who look nothing like you online. Follow folks whose stories make you uncomfortable, make you ask hard questions. Follow me and at me, right? Call me out, at Ziad the activist. I won't be mad. And additionally, what I really hope y'all do is pick one thing. Look around the world right now and pick one thing that you want to change about the world. Maybe it's the dress code at your school. Maybe it's that your history class has never taught your stories or your realities. Whatever it might be, choose one thing and take one step. Take one step forward to do something about that. Something that makes you feel like you're taking a step forward, because when I started, I had no idea I'd end up here right now. But I took that first step, had no idea what I was doing, saw a problem in my community and said, I want to do something about it. So I created a website, created some social media handles, and somehow ended up here, somehow ended up starting a company, somehow ended up being a progressive advocate, whatever you want to call me. But here I am, and here we all are. And somehow we got here, so take that step. Pick one thing, whatever came into your mind first when I said that prompt, and do that thing. We all have something that makes our eyes light up when we talk about it, makes our stomach ignite when we think about it. So let's do that thing more. So many people ask me, you know, what's your advice in public speaking? My advice is don't. I don't speak and didn't get better at speaking because I trained in speaking. When you try to convince your mom to let you go out to that party, you become your most confident self because you believe what you're saying. Believe what you're saying. Have belief in your truth, and if you want to convince the person you're talking to enough, the rest follows. I believe what I'm saying, and so it comes through, I hope. I pray. But I believe that we all have that same power and capacity to do that same thing. It's just a matter of wanting to convince that person so much that your whole body gets into it. Because there's too much at stake, and I don't have to tell you that right now, being a young person is hard, uncomfortable, difficult. And it comes with stresses and pressures that I can only begin to articulate. But I believe that we have the power to not choose between different realities, but to claim them all. And to say confidently and proudly that we're not the leaders of tomorrow. We're the leaders of today. We're the leaders of right now. People need to stop telling me you're gonna be somebody someday. No, I'm somebody right now. We are somebody right now. And so the question becomes, to the adults in the room, if we are the leaders of tomorrow, if we're not the leaders of tomorrow, instead we're the leaders of today, are you gonna wait until tomorrow to talk to us? And I don't mean as guinea pigs, I mean as partners. Thank you.